The evening had that cozy stillness I love. Just me, the warmth of the kitchen, and the soft hum of the house settling in. I was folding Ricardo's shirts, one by one, thinking about how far we've come. When I heard the front door open, my heart did that silly little flutter it still does after all these years. He walked in, eyes shining like a boy with a secret. "I got the promotion," he said, grinning from ear to ear. And in that moment, my world felt so full, so right. I rushed to him, arms around his neck, laughing into his shoulder. "I knew it," I whispered. "You've worked so hard. You deserve this." And I meant it. Every word. I've seen his late nights, the stress, the sacrifice. I've stood beside him when things were uncertain, always believing his time would come. This felt like a victory for both of us. A new chapter. A promise. Later, as he explained there'd be a company dinner, employees only, I tried not to let the pang of disappointment show. I nodded, smiled, told him I understood. Of course I did. I trusted him, always had. I straightened his tie before he left, smoothed down his collar, kissed his cheek. "You deserve this," I said again. And I meant that too. As I watched him walk out the door, I felt something warm settle in my chest. A quiet kind of pride, like I was watching the man I chose finally step into his light. I poured myself a glass of wine, lit a candle, and let the glow of the moment fill the room. Life hadn't always been easy for us, but somehow, this felt like a turning point. The kind that makes the struggles worth it. The kind that whispers, "You made it." I imagined him standing in a room full of colleagues, confident, charming, finally being seen for everything I always knew he was. I pictured them raising glasses in his honor, and I smiled, thinking how lucky I was to be his wife. I never needed the spotlight. I was happy cheering from the sidelines. His success was mine too. That's how love works when it's real. Later, I padded around the house in slippers, letting the evening unwind slowly. A quiet bath, a favorite book. I even pulled out the good blanket from the closet, the one we only used on special nights. Because tonight was special. Not because of the promotion, but because I felt so sure of us. So safe in this life we'd built. And I fell asleep that night believing we were exactly where we were meant to be. The next morning, I woke up still smiling. I set the table for two, even though I knew he wouldn't be back until later. Habit, I guess. Love has a way of filling the spaces, even when they're empty. I found myself humming as I watered the plants, folded throw blankets, even picked out a little gift bag to surprise him when he got home. Just a small token, something to say, "I'm proud of you." The day drifted by with that same sense of warmth. I texted him a few times. Nothing clingy, just little things. "Hope it's going well," or "Don't forget to eat." That's who I've always been with him. Supportive, present, rooting from the background. And when he didn't reply right away, I figured he was busy, surrounded by colleagues, making plans, shaking hands. It made sense. He was moving up. That evening, I curled up on the couch, letting myself imagine the future. Maybe a weekend getaway, a dinner out, a toast to what comes next. Everything felt open, promising, just waiting for us. So when my phone finally buzzed and I saw his name on the screen, my heart skipped again, this time with excitement. I thought, he's thinking of me too. But the moment I opened that message, everything changed. At first, it felt like any other buzz. Just a simple vibration from the phone on the coffee table, barely noticeable over the sound of the TV. I reached for it casually, expecting something sweet, maybe a "wish you were here," or even a quick photo of the menu. That's the kind of thing Ricardo would do, at least in the world I thought we lived in. I smiled as my thumb tapped the screen, My body relaxed, open, unguarded. But then the image loaded, and I stopped breathing. There he was, my husband. The man I'd just sent out the door with love still lingering on his collar. And next to him, her, wrapped around him like she belonged there, like she'd always been there. Smiling, radiant, too familiar. My hand froze midair, phone suddenly heavier, like it carried a different kind of gravity. A cruel one. Then the words, just beneath the photo, cut sharper than the image itself. He deserves a woman better than you. That one line shattered something I didn't even know could break. My vision blurred, my skin turned ice cold. In a second, everything I'd believed collapsed. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't an accident. It was planned, meant to hurt, meant to humiliate, and it worked. The room around me disappeared. The flicker of the television, the ticking of the wall clock, even the soft hum of the refrigerator. All of it went silent. It was just me and that message, burning like a brand in my palm. My heart didn't race. It stalled. Like it couldn't believe what it was seeing either. I read the caption again and again, hoping I'd somehow misunderstood. But the cruelty was too deliberate to be a mistake. I tried to move, to stand, to breathe, but my body wouldn't cooperate. My hands trembled so badly I almost dropped the phone. Tears didn't come. Not right away. It was something deeper than sadness, like grief, but heavier. I sat there, staring at the woman in the photo, at the way she looked at him, like she knew she'd won. And for the first time in my life, I felt invisible in my own marriage. And then it hit me. This wasn't just betrayal. This was performance. This private dinner wasn't private at all. It was a setup, an unveiling. He didn't just choose someone else. He made sure I'd see it. And worse, so would others. My mind spiraled through questions I couldn't answer. Who sent it? Who else knew? And why now? But one truth rose above the noise. I had been erased. I sat there for what felt like hours, though the clock said minutes. The silence around me wasn't peaceful anymore. It was suffocating. My fingers clenched the phone so tightly they ached. I wanted to scream, throw it, smash something. But all I could do was sit in that numbness, replaying the image like a cruel loop. That smile on her face, his arm around her, that message, those words. I kept thinking, how long had this been happening? Was this the first time or just the first time he let me see? I searched back in my memory for clues I might have missed. Late nights, vague answers, sudden meetings. And each time I thought of a moment, it rewrote itself with new meaning. Love that once felt solid now looked full of cracks I never dared to notice. But in the center of all that pain, something inside me shifted. Not anger, not even revenge, just a quiet, sharp clarity. If this was the truth, then I couldn't pretend anymore. He didn't just betray me, he erased me from the story of his success. But he forgot one thing. I was never the footnote. And as I stared at that photo one last time, I knew. I wouldn't stay frozen. Not for long. The sun rose, but I didn't feel it. It came through the windows in soft, golden streaks, lighting up the same walls that had once felt safe. I hadn't slept. Not even a minute. I'd just sat there, wrapped in a blanket that didn't warm me, staring at nothing. But my eyes were dry now. The tears had burned themselves out. What replaced them was something colder, sharper, like steel being forged inside me. I stood up slowly, every joint stiff from the weight of the night. I didn't look in the mirror. I wasn't ready to see her yet. The woman who'd gone to sleep believing in love and woke up a ghost in her own home. But something inside me whispered, "Get up." So I did. I made coffee, not out of habit, but out of defiance. My hands were still shaking, but my mind was beginning to clear. I picked up my phone, not to cry or plead, but to search. First her face, then her name, then connection after connection. Every click revealed a new layer, and suddenly, I wasn't just a wife mourning a betrayal. I was a woman gathering proof. His story was full of holes, and now I had reason to dig. Every photo, every message, every whispered excuse. I wasn't looking for closure. I was preparing for something else entirely. I opened the laptop like I was clocking in for a job I hadn't asked for, but one I intended to finish. His digital life wasn't as hidden as he thought. A few quick searches, some familiar passwords, and suddenly, his world was cracked open. Calendar entries that didn't match his words, hotel reservations, late-night ride shares to places he never mentioned. I wasn't shocked anymore. I was focused. Her name appeared in emails, flirtatious, careless, as if I didn't exist. But it wasn't just her. It was others, too. Patterns. Repeats. He'd been lying long before this woman entered the picture. That message wasn't the beginning. It was the reveal. And now, I had the truth. Not speculation, not emotion. Evidence. Tangible. Undeniable proof. And the more I found, the calmer I became. Each screenshot I saved was a stitch in the armor I was building. Every forwarded email, a line drawn in the sand. The woman he thought was weak, broken, discarded, she was waking up. And she wasn't just done with him. She was done doubting herself. I whispered it, like a promise to the version of me who still hurt. You wanted a better woman? You're about to meet her. The printer whirred steadily as page after page slid into the tray. I watched each one like a piece of the puzzle falling into place. Dates, messages, photos, receipts. There was no rage now, just precision. I wasn't yelling. I wasn't crying. I was documenting, quietly, methodically, like a woman preparing for a meeting where she would no longer be ignored. I started writing emails, not to him, never to him, but to the people who mattered. His HR manager, a senior executive I'd met once at a company picnic, a client he'd mentioned too many times, too fondly. Every name was selected with care. These weren't revenge letters. They were formal, clear, backed with evidence. The kind of emails that don't get deleted. The kind that change outcomes. And as I sent the final message, I felt something shift deep inside. Not satisfaction. Not yet. But power, new and undeniable. He thought he'd taken everything from me, but all he did was free me from pretending. I wasn't just reacting anymore. I was rewriting, reclaiming. And while he walked through his days unaware, I was already planning the moment the truth would walk in right behind him. The event was polished, corporate, perfectly staged. White tablecloths, clinking glasses, laughter rehearsed like lines in a play. Everyone dressed their best, including him. Ricardo stood near the center, wearing the same smug confidence he always saved for rooms full of important people. He had no idea today wasn't just about a contract. It was about consequences, and I was already in the room. I stepped in slowly, heels tapping with quiet confidence, my head high. Every detail of my outfit chosen for control, not approval. Heads turned. Some smiled in recognition, others stared with curiosity. I didn't belong in this setting, at least not according to him. But that was the point. I wasn't here as his plus one. I wasn't here to support him. I was here to end the illusion. I spotted the CEO first, elegant, guarded, the kind of man who read situations before speaking. I approached him without hesitation and introduced myself properly, not as someone's wife, but as someone with something he needed to see. I handed him the envelope, crisp and full of truth. I believe this concerns a matter of company policy, I said softly, just loud enough for a few ears nearby to catch. The CEO took the envelope with a polite nod, But as his eyes scanned the contents, his expression shifted. Controlled, but unmistakably tense. He turned to one of his associates, gestured quietly, and suddenly, a quiet corner of the room became the center of gravity. Whispers began to ripple outward, slow at first, like wind through tall grass. I didn't need to say a word more. The paper spoke for me. Ricardo noticed the shift. He always could read a room, especially when it stopped revolving around him. He looked toward the commotion, and then he saw me. For a second, he smiled, as if I'd come to surprise him, to celebrate his big day. But that smile faltered when he realized who I was standing with, and what I was holding. His steps slowed, his face tightened. Panic, just a flicker, cracked through. I didn't raise my voice, I didn't cry. I just turned slightly, met his eyes across the room, and spoke clearly. He lied to his wife, his company, and himself. But I'm not here for revenge. I'm here to make sure the right woman wins. My words were deliberate, calm, loud enough for the table beside us to pause. And in that moment, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel erased. I felt seen, fully. Ricardo tried to speak, to explain, to downplay, to salvage. But the room wasn't listening to him anymore. A few polite smiles faded. Conversations paused. The man who once thrived on being the center of attention was now exposed in the worst possible light. One of the board members stepped aside with the CEO, envelope in hand, and within moments, the polished atmosphere turned brittle. A woman from HR approached him, voice low but firm. I couldn't hear the words, but I didn't need to. The message was clear in his posture, his shoulders stiff, jaw clenched, the way his hands curled at his sides. He wasn't being congratulated. He was being evaluated and judged, not just by his superiors, but by every person in that room who had watched him celebrate a lie. I didn't stay for the fallout. I didn't need to. I'd said what mattered, delivered what couldn't be ignored. As I walked out, I felt lighter, not vindicated, but free. The woman who once held his tie and wished him luck had vanished. In her place stood someone new. Someone who didn't just react to betrayal. She rewrote the rules, and she was just getting started. Weeks had passed. The chaos had settled, the whispers faded, and the man who once stood tall in boardrooms now walked through shadows of his own making. But I wasn't watching anymore. My focus had shifted, to paperwork, to plans, to possibilities. I sat at a clean, sunlit desk, a pen in hand, about to sign something that mattered not because of what I left behind, but because of what I was building next. It wasn't about him anymore. It never truly was. The divorce papers were there, yes. But beside them were documents for a business loan I'd applied for quietly, confidently. A project I'd put off for years while cheering someone else on. Now it was my turn. And as I wrote my name in ink, it felt different than before. Firmer, fuller. Like a signature on a life I finally chose for myself. He'd tried to reach out, calls, messages, even a letter, hand-delivered and left unopened on my doorstep. But I didn't owe him words, not anymore. Closure doesn't always come from a conversation. Sometimes it comes from silence, from the click of a pen, from the steady sound of a woman moving forward. I didn't need to look back to know he was watching. I could feel it, and I let him. People had started asking where I'd been, what had happened. But I didn't owe them details either. I gave them smiles. Grace. A presence they hadn't noticed before, stronger, clearer. I wore my peace like perfume, soft but impossible to ignore. The woman who used to dim her light to make others comfortable now stood fully in the sun. And it felt good on my skin. I posted just one photo, nothing dramatic. Just me, outside the new office space I'd rented. Sun on my face, hair pulled back, one hand holding keys, the other tucked in my pocket. No caption, but one. The best revenge is proving you were always the upgrade. I didn't tag anyone. I didn't need to. The message wasn't meant for followers. It was for me. For the girl I used to be. For the woman I'd become. The other woman? She vanished. Whatever story they had built collapsed without a spotlight. No public apology, no dramatic exit, just absence. And honestly, that was enough. She had been a chapter, a painful, necessary one, but not the ending. My story was no longer about what they did. It was about what I would do now that no one else was writing it for me. That morning, I walked out of the glass office building where I'd just signed my name, on papers that mattered, on dreams I'd delayed, on a future that was finally mine. The city buzzed around me, but I moved through it with calm purpose. I wasn't just the woman who survived betrayal. I was the woman who turned it into blueprint, into fire, into fuel. I passed by reflections in the windows and didn't flinch anymore. I saw her, head high, spine straight, eyes clear, not bitter, not broken. Just awake, fully. For the first time in years, I wasn't looking over my shoulder. I wasn't wondering what he was doing or who he was with. I was walking forward, and everything behind me was exactly where it needed to be. Behind.